So, Uncle Mark, in this world, there are people who are so magically good
Yeah.
that we all feel a special feeling about them.
Yeah. Mr. Rogers, maybe.
Sure.
A lot of people like Fabio quite a bit.
Sure, absolutely. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Uncle Doug seems like a pretty nice guy.
I like Fabio.
So there you go.
Yeah. Let's go with Uncle Doug. Yeah.
Then there are people that the church likes a lot, and you found one of those. Is that true?
Yeah. It's kind of the Catholic version of a superdelegate, right? It's just they got quite a few more votes than just your average schmo. It's the electoral college. So every once in a while we like to focus on a saint, mostly just because Catholicism is endlessly bizarre. It's fascinating that it's both so fucking weird and beloved of a billion plus people on this planet.
Yeah.
So I think Catholics, like a lot of people, maybe just ignore a few of the strange little bits. But let's take a look at one of those. Two of those strange little bits, and you'll know what I'm talking about in a minute. So today I want to talk about an OG saint, and that would be Saint Agatha of Sicily, who many of you probably know exactly nothing about.
I think I know Saint Agatha of Christie. Is that the same thing, or?
Yeah, she was the most mysterious of saints. That
Boo.
yeah, she was the patron saint. She was the patron saint of the murderer being in the room. So Saint Agatha, who I had very, very knowledge of, except for one little moment when I was in art history in art school, and we'll get to it. But so she, Saint Agatha, although Saint was not her first name at birth, as you can imagine, she added that later on, was born in Catania, or maybe she was born in Palermo, Sicily, around the year 231 ACE. So she's quite an old saint. And as you remember, 231 ACE was basically just a super good time to be alive. And so to prove that point, I will describe to you at some point how she died really badly just 20 years later in 251. And of course, I don't have to tell you guys this. We know of her because her story is first recorded, and I'm going to sprain my tongue saying this, in the Martyrologium Heroinianum. Yeah. And that's a famous martyrology, which is kind of a yearbook of murdered faithful, kept by none other than Saint Jerome of Stridon.
A good martyrology. Frankly, there need to be more martyrological podcasts, because I feel like a good martyrology is just it's like true crime, only in a different slightly different vein.
Boring and insane at the same time.
Right.
I think we might be the leading martyrological podcast.
We
at
might
this
be,
point, but I'm not willing to bet everything I have on it. So, as listeners no doubt already know, she is also mentioned in the Synaxarion and, of course, the Carmenia of Ventantius Fortunatus. So, she's really a patron saint beloved of people who write books with titles that are impossible to pronounce.
Right.
But she is not their patron saint. So, what is her story? What is the story of Saint Agatha of Sicily? So, like our friend Saint Bibiana, if you remember we discussed a while back, who refused to become a lesbian, so they beat her to death with lead plummets.
Right.
Saint Agatha of Sicily is one of the most venerated virgin martyrs of Christian antiquity.
Ooh.
She was very young, but as Dr. Eldon Tyrell said in Blade Runner, the candle that burns half as long was surely twice as virtuous. So
Bladereth Runicus Dominicatus
Overus. So she was born to a rich family of some kind of nobility in Sicily. And because she loved God so much, at the tender age of 15, she had herself made into a consecrated virgin, which is basically a nun, but you still kind of live at home and don't have to wear the habit, et cetera, et cetera. So you're a virgin for life and you live in your parents' basement. So they were incels before the internet, right?
No, that's just a cell. The in part doesn't apply.
So along comes this lowborn Roman local prefect by the name of Quintianus. He tried pitching woo at young Agatha, and she rejected him, because she was a permanent virgin for Jesus and all that jazz. So
Right.
he tries again and is rebuffed. So because someone was rude to him and he wouldn't fuck him, he bought a tiki torch and voted for a Nazi. The end. No, he actually tried several more times, and when she wouldn't give up, the Virgo Castoria, little Easter egg for our Latin-speaking listeners, he had her dragged in front of the local judge. And who was this local judge, Uncle Dan? It was himself.
Oh.
Yeah. So not good for Agatha of Sicily. So now recall that her few unlucky years were spent under what Christians have come to call the persecution of Emperor Decius, who, as we all know, issued an edict that all Roman subjects would make sacrifices to the old gods and have those recorded by local authorities. So this is the Catholic Church really got into the saint business, centuries later. They made a ton of saints out of this time. Now, a little aside, they've whipped this edict up into this huge hurricane of mass discrimination against the faithful, but the historical record shows not much in the way of evidence of programmatic discrimination and violence against Christians during this period, since it wasn't long afterwards that Constantine would declare it the official religion. Yada, yada, yada. But
Sure.
Why let that get in the way of a good story? So basically the narrative is that Quintianus wanted under the toga of young Agatha, and knowing the beastly Decius would do nothing to stop him, he abused his authority in order to force her to comply, much like a 3rd century version of ICE. So Quintianus drags her into court and threatens her with torture and death. Even then she won't relent, and in front of the court she prays, "Jesus Christ, Lord of all, you see my heart. You know my desires. Possess all that I am your sheep. Make me worthy to overcome the devil." So that pissed Quintanius off, of course, because he was not into the Christian thing.
Well, and
was,
what could be less sexy than praying? I mean, come on. You're really ruining the mood at that point.
Spare a thought for the court reporter at that point that was trying to chisel that into the stone tablet as she was
that was recording that in a fresco, so in a mosaic. So pissed off Quintanius has her taken to a brothel run by a woman who, of course, was named Aphrodisia, where Agnes suffered, and this is where it's going to start to get gruesome for anybody who's triggered by anything, where Agnes suffered a brutal month of rape and assault in an attempt to get her to change her mind. And then Quintanius dragged her back into court and demanded once again that she put out, and apparently even begged her to do it, but she would not relent. So in a rage, again, here comes any triggering possibilities. In a rage, he had her imprisoned where she was stretched on a rack, torn with iron hooks and whipped.
Ugh.
And finally, they cut her breasts off with pincers.
Jesus.
So, somehow surviving all this, she got dragged into the court again.
Yeah,
and
wait a
once
minute.
again,
I'm going to stop you right there. She did not survive all that.
She survived. Well,
I'm just going to point out that, medically speaking, in that time period, with all the things that you just described, she's already dead. But go on with your story.
Are you saying that some part of the story of sainthood might not be true?
I'm saying we're focusing on the wrong miracle. She's alive still.
Let's remember that just a few weeks ago we did a story about a saint who survived his own decapitation and walked 7 miles. So, getting your tits cut off, yeah, if you can survive a decapitation, you can probably deal with this for a bit.
Little did they know they were actually helping her survive the breast cancer that none of them knew she had.
That would be the true miracle, right? So she taken into court again. Somehow she got through this. Refuses his final offer of a dream date.
So hang on. So after all, he's stretched her in a rack, torn her with hooks, chopped her boobs off, and he still wants to marry her.
He's like super into her now.
I think this story could be told from a very different perspective. This guy really loved this woman. It's a rom-com.
It doesn't matter.
It gives a new definition to bodice ripping, right? So
She just forgot to wear the bodice. That's it. That's all.
It's her fault. Why did she put the bodice on when they got to the ripping? So
The tagline of the movie would be, she puts the Catholic Mass in double mastectomy.
Oh my God.
Oh, Jesus. So that aside, she goes into court, bound up somehow, and she got a little blood, honey, and he once again offers her himself as this kind of dream date, and she refuses and responds to this horrible mutilation by saying to Quintianus, "Cruel man, have you forgotten your mother and the breast that nourished you, that you dare to mutilate me this way?" Which I think is a fair question.
Right.
Yep,
So
sure.
a fair question. So he continues to feel no mercy for Agatha, and then she was finally sentenced to be burned at the stake. And for an odd twist for a martyrdom, for a saint, for reasons that I could not find any detail about, she was saved from that gruesome fate by an earthquake. That's all it says. Saved from being burned by this. Maybe the stake fell over. I don't know. It doesn't say what it was that saved her. So she lived in prison for another 2 years, apparently. And it's assumed that she died there in 251 ACE. So neither of these people having gotten what they wanted. What kind of magic do you think this persistent young virgin generated post-mortem? Well, let me tell you. In 1551, she appeared as an apparition to a Benedictine nun and therefore saved Malta from a Turkish invasion. So that's
wow.
pretty neat. Yeah,
That's a good trick.
pretty neat.
Okay.
And the way it was written in this little
The Turks
Catholic
are
thing was
coming.
like,
The Turks are coming. Someone tell a nun.
Right, exactly. I've been waiting for a job for 1,300 years, and God finally go tell her about the Turks.
Go tell that
Yeah.
nun about the Turks.
Yeah, so that's all it said, like, duh. And just a year after her death, she's believed to have stopped an impending eruption of Mount Etna. And to this day, the people of Catania still parade her veil through the streets on her feast day, which is, Uncle Doug, obviously knows, February 5th.
Of course.
In order to prevent volcanic eruption. So that's also super neat. So knowing all,
You'd think
knowing
that
all
they could
this
just
about-
put the veil over the volcano. And that,
Yeah, typically virgins are just thrown directly into the volcano, and don't have the aspect of their body most resembling a volcano cut off. But
Right.
right. Well,
Well, they were going to throw her in the volcano, but she was saved by an earthquake.
it's like jazz, just as variations. So, knowing all this about this poor kid, you won't be surprised by what things she is the patron saint of. So she's the patron saint of Sicily. No surprise there. She's the patron saint of natural disasters. So good to know mudslides have a saint of their own, I guess.
yeah.
Patron saint of jewelers. Okay. Also of, and this is specific, breast cancer.
Okay.
Well, that makes sense.
I was gonna say if you had said lingerie makers, that would have been funny.
Or tailors, but
Right.
braziers. But not specifically people with breast cancer. So just breast cancer.
Oh, I didn't know that cancer's got saints.
Well, that's the same thing with natural
cancer-
disasters. Like, it's not the survivors or victims of natural disasters. It's natural disasters, right?
Right, and that will probably be somebody else. But
Right.
like with at least breast cancer has someone to pray to.
Yeah.
Also, wet nurses, which makes sense.
Does
Rape
it though?
victims.
Like she was never a
Well-
wet nurse. She couldn't do any wet. Like virgins don't have anyone to nurse anyway.
But it's the breast thing. You'll see. It's all about the breast thing. It's just breast. So
which is
rape
dangerous around
victims-
Uncle Doug, but that's okay.
Oh, geez. Rape victims makes total sense. Torture victims also makes total sense.
Yeah.
And bell founders.
Yeah.
Now,
All right.
what is a bell founder? That is a person who casts church bells.
Right.
Why she is the saint of church bells, church bell makers, according to the Big Book of Saints, is because severed breasts are shaped like bells.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
my God.
Wow.
So, yeah, yummy, huh? So let's just say you find yourself of an afternoon in Palermo, in the shade of Mount Etna, dozing in her slumber because of the constant geological intercession of a 20-year-old girl killed 1,500 years ago. But you're a little hungry and want a snack to commemorate her. Well, fellas, you're in luck. You can enjoy a mine di Sant'Agata, which is a sweet little dome-shaped thing of a treat with a bright red cherry on top. I'm serious. Enjoyed by local families who like giving their children a dessert that encourages them to think about a girl having her breast chopped off by a vicious and corrupt legal system.
Wow.
So I feel like they ought to sell them in pairs, but enjoy them any way you like. So that's our friend Saint Agatha of Sicily, everyone.
Oh my God! Well, that is a hell of a tale, and
Yeah.
now I'm gonna go get me a boob dessert.
Let's go get some boob desserts. Let's move on.
Moving on.